Welcome to The Rite of Passage with Vanessa Riley, the podcast where storytelling meets passion and every page turns into a new adventure. I'm your host, Vanessa Riley, and together we'll dive deep into untold histories, reflect on current events through a historical lens, share behind-the-scenes writing insights, and explore the ups and downs of the author's journey. From rich historical novels to unforgettable characters to pop culture's intrusion on the written word, hey, we're going to explore it all. So grab your pen, your notebook, and let's begin our journey through the written word. Let's start your rite of passage. Consent in the time when a Black woman can say no. As a writer, I love giving readers something they didn't expect. When plotting a murder mystery, I meticulously plant clues, red herrings, and unexpected connections, ensuring readers will turn the pages, eager for what's next. The writer's mind is a playground. It's the world as we know it, the familiar, the structured, and the understood. Readers are conditioned for the norm. But when a writer disrupts the mundane, offering a twist, it intrigues and refreshes. We're curious beings. We crave learning and understanding. We seek order. Flipping genre roles or challenging leadership expectations is a surefire way to shake things up and offer a new perspective. Last year, I wrote a scene I initially thought was humorous, just like a writer. An 1800s heroine, desperate to become a physician, disguises herself as a man to attend medical lectures. At the time, women were barred from pursuing careers as scientists or physicians. The ones who did often resorted to extraordinary measures to follow their passions. In the scene, Scarlett, the determined heroine, is on the verge of being discovered. Her nemesis, an immigrant physician named Stephen, steps in to save her by pretending she's his male cousin. This clever ruse spares Scarlett from scandal, but forces her to blend in with the men, including accompanying them to a brothel. Turning the tables, Scarlett ends up saving Stephen. While he's incapacitated during a narcoleptic episode, she kisses him, adding what I thought was a layer of comedic drama to the brothel scene. Here's the rub. That kiss happened without his consent. He was barely conscious. It doesn't matter if it was funny, if readers were in on the joke, or if it showcased her autonomy. By giving her this power, I stripped his from him. That moment had to change. I deleted the kiss. The scene in A Wager at Midnight is still funny, still scandalous, but it's respectful. Some may say, Vanessa, lighten up, it's humor. And don't we need more joy in the world? All true. But here's a greater truth. Consent is not a double standard. It's a rule. It's a right. Everyone's no should carry the same weight. We modern women demand for ourselves. The ability to say no is sacred. To paraphrase Matthew 5:37, all you need to say is yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the devil. Many of you might be nodding in agreement. Yet this week reminds us that some people still struggle with a woman's no, especially when that woman is Black. This week, a spokesman for the office of Barack and Michelle Obama announced that Ms. Obama would not attend the 2025 inauguration. Unlike her absence from President Carter's funeral, which was attributed to a scheduling conflict, this was a clear, definitive, unexplained no. Reactions have been predictable. Some applaud her for setting boundaries, acknowledging the toll of public life and the personal risks she and her family have endured. Others clutched their pearls, lamenting political norms. Those quaint phrases that, bless their hearts, weren't universally applied when it mattered most. Meanwhile, my people, oh, you know who you are, created a delicious meme that summed it all up. If I send you Michelle's picture, I'm not coming. These memes reminded me of the one sparked by Anita Baker when her concert, scheduled to start at 7 p.m. on May 11, 2024 at State Farm Arena here in Atlanta, was canceled at 6:54 p.m. due to unforeseen circumstances. I'll admit these memes are funny, and I want to send a special thank you to Jen M. Jackson and Sweet Alpha Leda from TikTok for sending some great ones. But looking at the popularity of these memes reveals something sobering. Are women the only ones who cancel? Why aren't there more memes like these for men who say no? Do they not have the agency to do so? Of course they do. That's sarcasm. Because men cancel all the time. They just aren't mocked as much. Chris Rock, for instance, canceled hosting the 2022 Governor's Award after the infamous Oscar slap. If humor is fair game, where's the meme with his picture saying, "Now, sorry I can't be there, still recovering from saying the wrong thing"? Or take James Franco, who mentally didn't show up to co-host the 2011 Oscars. Sure, he was physically present, but he failed to fulfill his duties. Anne Hathaway, the other co-host, had to carry the night. A woman having to pick up the slack. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? And it is definitely meme-worthy. Nonetheless, people have a right to cancel, just as they have a right to say no. That includes celebrities. Saying no should be a human right. But for that to hold true, society must first recognize the humanity and autonomy of every person who withdraws their consent. Historically, women have struggled with autonomy and consent. For much of history, women were required to live under the authority of a father, a husband, or a male guardian. It wasn't until 1974 that women were allowed to obtain credit in their own name. Equal pay legislation dates back only to the 1960s. The societal acknowledgement of a woman's right to make her own way in the world is lacking. It's hard to understand that a woman's ability to work for fair wages and to decide her own path is merely 65 years old. That's not that old. It's barely old enough to get Social Security. The history is bleaker for Black women. For us, the ability to say no to the most egregious violations was often denied. Our consent was stolen by laws, society, and the systems meant to promote and protect others. A timeline of Black women and the right to say no. 1662, Virginia hereditary slave law. Children's status, enslaved or free, followed their mother, stripping Black women of autonomy over their offspring. Side note, this came about because Elizabeth Key, born to an enslaved woman and a white Englishman, Thomas Key, legally gained her freedom in 1655 by arguing that she was baptized and freed by her father. The law of 1662 was enacted to ensure that never happened again. 1705, Virginia Slave Codes. These codes reduced enslaved people to property. This codifies sexual violence against all the enslaved, but particularly Black women. 1786, the Tignon laws of Louisiana. Black women were forced to cover their hair in public. 1857 Dred Scott versus Sanford. This decision denied Black people citizenship. This reaffirms that Black women and Black men are without legal rights to refuse exploitation or violence nationwide. 1865 to 1866 are the Black Codes. These are restrictive laws curtailing free women's mobility and punish those who refused exploitive labor with vagrancy charges. 1927, Buck versus Bell. This Supreme Court decision upholds forced sterilization laws targeting Black women under eugenics programs. 1944, the rape case of Recy Taylor. Recy Taylor identified her 6 white attackers, but they were never brought to justice. Alabama apologized for this in 2011. 1980s, workplace dress codes. Bans on natural hairstyles like braids and afros forced Black women to conform to Eurocentric beauty standards. 1994, the Violence Against Women Act. While a step forward, this legislation didn't fully address the unique barriers Black women face in seeking protection, such as underreporting, racial profiling, mistrust in authority, and access to culturally competent services. Of course, there are some wins. In 1967, we have Loving versus Virginia. This landmark case struck down laws eliminating restrictions on who women could marry. 1973, Relf versus Weinberger. This case exposed federally funded forced sterilizations of Black women, helping to end the practice. 2019 to the present, the Crown Act. This legislation prohibits discrimination based on natural hairstyles, affirming Black women's autonomy over their appearance. So parity with others, being legally able to say yes to bodily autonomy and hairstyles, is less than a decade old for Black women. That should horrify you. As a Black woman and a lover of history, I'm often told to forgive and forget. There's a heavy emphasis on forgiveness and a whole lot of forgetting. That notion is anathema to my soul. My lungs struggle to seize air under the weight of ongoing restrictions. There are new laws stripping away hard-fought rights. Fear and foolishness is trying to make hard-won victories DEI casualties. It's book bans, whitewashed textbooks, tone policing, and countless other microaggressions designed to smother. Breathe. Just breathe. Hear my heart. Autonomy for me doesn't mean taking from you. Equality for one group doesn't mean making any other lesser. Checking on my sisters doesn't mean I wish ill on others or the misters. We all gain when everyone's yes and no's are respected. Writers, readers, citizens, hear me. Let us be wise with our words, speaking peace into existence. Let us remember and listen. Let us accept that no is a complete sentence without the need for adjectives or explanations. In times such as these, when injustice still reigns, people have a right to step back, breathe, and find their peace. Writers, I encourage you to take a more critical eye to your work. Let's not ignore the forces trying to strip away consent through laws, norms, even memes disguised as humor. We wield power with our words, and we should all consent to building up and renewing everyone who reads them. If you want a deeper dive into the intersectionality of all of this, as a book girly, I have some recommendations for you. Women, Race, and Class by Angela Davis explores the historical struggles of women, especially Black women, to claim autonomy and to say no to oppression. They Were Her Property by Stephanie E. Jones Rogers examines the role of white women in the American slave economy and highlights the systemic oppression of Black women. Take My Hand by Dolan Perkins Valdez provides important connections between her novel and the case of Rife v. Weinberg and forced sterilizations. Sisters Citizens by Melissa V. Harris Perry analyzes how stereotypes affect Black women's lives and their ability to assert agency. Ain't I a Woman by Bell Hooks explores the intersections of race and gender and the marginalization of Black women. Hood Feminism, Notes from the Women That a Movement Forgot by Mickey Kendall, highlights the importance of boundaries and self-advocacy, especially for marginalized communities. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you'll come again. This is Vanessa Riley.